everyone, welcome or welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Nina. I'm a life transformation coach, and here at this channel we talk all about mental health, personal development, and understanding our own psychology. If you are not yet a subscriber, please go ahead and become one. We definitely want you to stay connected. And today we are going to be talking about the link between clutter and low self-esteem. Now, no one aspires to live in a cluttered home or to become messy or disorganized, and there's a lot of different reasons why and how this can begin to happen. But eventually, when we live this way, it gets to a point where we feel completely overwhelmed, we feel powerless, and oftentimes we also feel paralyzed. So we know the problem is there, we just don't know how to fix it, or we feel that we are unable to fix it. And today I wanted to talk about one of the most disheartening ripple effects that can happen from living in all this excessive clutter, and that is the devastating toll that it can take on our self-esteem. So we're going to be talking about this connection, why it happens, and of course talk about solutions. But before we get into it, I just want to make sure that you are watching this video through a lens of self-compassion. We need to be able to take all these negative emotions and judgments that we have about ourselves for being this way aside. It is not something that you selected for your life. It happened for whatever reason. We got here because of many different things probably, but it's important that we look forward and not look behind us. I want you to know also that you are not alone in this struggle. This is probably the number one thing that people email me about or want to hire me to work on, and it's also a struggle that I personally had for years and years and years. I was finally able to understand it and the psychology behind it, and I was able to fully overcome it, which is why I am able to help other people with the same issue. So no matter how defeated that you feel right now, I want you to know and believe that this is something that you can absolutely overcome. Yes, there is hope. Even if you've tried and failed a million times, even if you've never been able to get the motivation to actually get started, this is something that you can change about your life. So starting at the very beginning, the research is extremely clear, and we know for sure that there is a direct link between physical clutter and emotional clutter, which means that clutter is directly tied to our mental health. It can just affect us on so many levels, many of which we are not even aware of, and the cause and the effect of the stress that this clutter brings can lead to feelings of hopelessness and helplessness and self-defeat, which is absolutely tied into our self-worth. It can even be connected with intense anxiety and depression in some cases, and can cause that serious decline in our self-efficacy as well as our self-esteem. And there are many different factors that really contribute to this. The first is the embarrassment that we might feel that things have gotten this bad or that we live this way in the first place. It can lead us to have feelings of shame. We want to hide the way we live. We don't want other people to see us. So of course that's going to make us very, very isolated. The second is that we can feel extremely powerless. We feel like we have this problem that we can see and we can't do anything about it, or we feel like we can't do anything about it. It's causing ripple effects in many different areas in our life, and we just feel like a failure because we know the problem's there, yet we're not doing anything about it. And that really ties into the third thing, which is a lack of action. Whenever we have issues and problems in our life and we don't do anything about them, we get stuck. Again, we just feel paralyzed, and it becomes more and more intimidating to try to begin to solve the issue. And the fourth most common thing I see really has kind of two components. The first is that we have a faulty belief that our possessions in some way define us, that we need all of these things around us to validate us in some way. And the problem with this is that we are judging our self-worth on external factors instead of internal factors. And the second part of that problem is that when we are looking externally and we are seeing visual proof, if you can call it that, of failing at a task or not having success at a task, we are directly associating that with our self-worth as well. We think if we have failed at this task, that must mean that we are a failure overall as a person, which is of course completely untrue, but we do often have that perception. But remember, we're still in the game. We are still working on this. There is still plenty of time in our life to overcome this issue, which we absolutely will, and our self-worth has nothing to do with any of these external factors. We are worthy, we are enough no matter what our house looks like. Doesn't mean that we can't make improvements, and of course we are going to, but that is not what we need to base our self-worth on. And this is where we need to start to really dig deep and offer ourselves self-compassion, because when we do have issues with our self-esteem, it can manifest in so many different areas in our life. It's not an isolated one thing. It can affect our relationships. It can affect how we present ourselves. We may not feel like we are worthy to dress well or to go out and do things anymore. It can also, of course, lead to issues in our homes such as clutter. So we need to have that self-understanding and have that self-compassion, because all of these things are linked together. And really it just becomes this vicious cycle where we have all these self-defeating thoughts and these negative emotions, which makes us feel depressed, which makes us feel unable to clean up, and our house gets cluttered and messy. And then we see that clutter and mess, and it makes us feel bad about ourselves, and the circle and the cycle keeps going and going and going. So in short, clutter can cause stress, depression, and low self-esteem, but it can also be a symptom of it. But the good news is that even though clutter can cause chaos and suffering in our life, decluttering can do the exact opposite. Just taking the smallest step, just starting the process, just beginning to take action can significantly reduce all these negative consequences. And for many, many people, outer order creates inner calm. So when we are able to gain control of our external environment, we are able to finally gain control of our internal environment. So let's go ahead and talk about how we can start on this healing journey and begin to live a life that is clutter-free. The very first part of this process is to finally gain a true understanding of why the clutter is there in the first place. Not the excuses, but the real true root of the problem. And sometimes this can be difficult to identify. So I do have a full video on this topic. It's called The Psychology of Disorganization, What Your Messy Life is Desperately Trying to Tell You. I will go ahead and link that down in the description box below, because once we know what the real issue is, or issues, in a lot of cases it's more than one thing. Once we have an understanding of what these things are, we can start to work on these problems. These are the real problems. The clutter is just a symptom of the problem. So we can start to heal these areas in our life, and we can oftentimes experience significant change very, very quickly. Now, the second part of the process is also going to require self-analysis. Now we are going to sit down and make a list of all the reasons that we have felt in the past, or are still currently feeling, that we cannot solve this problem. What have the barriers been? We need to be very, very honest with ourselves. We can write down what we will probably recognize immediately are the excuses that we have given ourselves. But what do you think the real issue is? Is it something internal? Is it something external? Is it a mix of things? Is it that we don't have motivation? Is it that we are lazy? Is it that our life is so stressful and unbalanced that we don't feel that we have time to start on this problem? Is it that we are feeling depressed? Is it that we feel like it's just so overwhelming we don't even know how to get started? we need to be able to determine which of these things are legitimate obstacles that we are going to have to work around, such as a physical disability or maybe depressive thoughts or struggling emotionally, which can make it, again, legitimately difficult for us to move forward. We also need to be able to determine which of these things are simply based out of our low thoughts about ourselves, our negative thinking, and irrational or automatic thoughts that really aren't true. We need to be able to provide evidence for ourselves that these things aren't true. And we can do this through a process of performing cognitive behavioral therapy on ourselves. And I know that may sound intimidating, but it's actually a very enjoyable process. I have a full video about it, so you can learn about that as well. I'll link that down in the description box below. But it's really just the process of learning to question our automatic thoughts and beliefs that are almost always negative, and to reframe them into something more positive after we've given it enough critical thought. And we've realized that these things are just based out of irrational feelings and, again, all these negative emotions. And that process also can help us in building our self-esteem as well. The third thing that we need to do is to let go of the past version of ourselves, and again, stop trapping ourselves into that thought pattern of just remembering constantly all the times that we feel that we have failed. Today is a new day and we need to be moving forward, and we can't become a new person and develop new habits when we are clinging to this old version of ourselves. There's a quote that a lot of people attribute to Buddha. I don't know if that is actually the author of this quote, but it basically says, every day we are born again. It's what we do with today that matters. And that is absolutely true. We need to focus on today, forget about the past, forget about all the judgments, all the shame, and just think about going forward. Our new focus is going to be on today and the future. And the fourth thing that we have to do, of course, is to actually take action. We must take action if we are ever going to improve our self-esteem and if we are ever going to make changes in this behavior. And when we take even the smallest step, we become inspired and we become motivated. We can't wait for motivation. We can't wait for inspiration. We just have to take action. It does not matter how small that action is. The simple act of taking action lets us understand psychologically that we do have control over our life and all the issues in our life. And I will go ahead and link one last video in the description box below, which is a solution to clutter and mess that is non-threatening, that is approached in a loving and compassionate and very realistic way that I think you will find you will be able to manage and keep up with, because it really asks you to do very, very little. So it is really a small stepping stone that is going to lead to bigger and bigger changes in your life. And lastly, get support if you can. You do not have to go through this journey alone. You can talk to a friend or a family member or even a mental health professional while you are going through this journey, because change, even when it's positive change, can seem very, very threatening and can bring up some, negative emotions at first, because we are making changes to our behavior. And even though it's going to improve our life, sometimes we can feel a little uneasy about that at first. So go ahead and talk to your friends about this if you have people that you can trust. And you can also really keep a dialogue with yourself by having a journal where you really track your progress and you write down your emotions, and hopefully you can start to see that your self-esteem begins to improve the further you go on in this journey. But definitely start with the process of having that self-understanding of why the issue is there, trying to figure out what the barriers you feel are really keeping you from making progress, and then finally taking that action. Any action is progress. Any action is moving forward. And again, please know that yes, you can be successful at that. I have had so many people have wonderful success stories by following this exact process. And again, it helped me as well. As always, I truly hope you found today's video to be healing and helpful. Please take a moment to subscribe and stay connected, and do leave a comment. I would love to hear where you are at in your own journey to become clutter-free. I truly want to thank you for spending time with me today, and I hope the rest of your day is absolutely extraordinary.